everyone. Welcome to one of these fireside chats that I love to do. As you are probably familiar with Volume 1, we did a lot of fireside chats, but this year, we did an entire full festival. And if you missed it, too bad for you. But don't worry, videos will also be available on our YouTube channel very, very soon. But today is a special day because I have with me one of the women who was pivotal in getting Deutsche Bank involved in working with us, and I have Sandra Powell. And I want to tell you something about Sandra Powell. You know, when we say Black women don't know how to network, Black women don't know how to support each other, it's a lie. We're just talking to this woman. She has achieved so much. The thing about Sandra as well, she's also one of the 51 women were put in this amazing art book with Voices in the Shadow that you can also get on our website. It's the limited edition, which is beautiful, and we're really proud of having her, should I say correctly. And she was also one of the panelists during the festival. But the festival was such a success. We didn't have enough time, so that for, Sandra, let me grab you so we can have 30 minutes to 25 minutes together where I can really, drain you, try to get more information from you. Because every time I speak to her, I learn something great. So I thought that I would be not selfish and share a bit of her knowledge. And you're going to meet her because Deutsche Bank and Global Tech Advocates Black Women in Tech are hosting an event on the 1st of December. You can go on Eventbrite to get your ticket. The tickets are limited and free, but they won't last forever. So get your ticket before it's too late. But yes, I want to talk with Sandra, discuss obviously her journey, her fantastic career. And obviously, as you know, Black women age gracefully, should I say. So it's good to have this conversation and really learn about her journey. So Sandra, it's so nice to have you. One of the rare Black female directors at Deutsche Bank. So tell us a bit more about you, who you are, and also about your career. What got you to where you are right now?
Such a long-winded, how long's a piece of string, right? So, as I said before, I've been doing this I actually put in a calculator the other day because I couldn't quite believe when I said it, over 30 years. And I have been doing it over 30 years. And it's been, to me, an incredible journey, I kind of look at it from a technology perspective. One of the things that technology has always been for me is a great leveler. Technology has always been about, can you do it? Can you add value? And can you be impactful when you do that? And, that's what technology really has been for me. And obviously I've been doing it in investment banking. I started my career in banking. I started as a trainee computer operator. That's like a temp of a temp of a temp. And it was an opportunity for me to get in. It was an opportunity for me to kind of do something that I thought that I was going to love. And, I managed to work my way through the institution I was working with. That was Bankers Trust at the time. And, managed to get into coding. So, when we first started out, I was writing, COBOL code and, we definitely were not anywhere near Java at that point. So yeah, that's how old I am. And then we moved into, very much, it was all very back end database engineering. So it was at the beginning of Sybase. That's really been the first database that I ever worked on. And then I moved into project management. So, I think that as I saw the journey of technology and how it was moving, and it was moving so quickly, my view always was that, I need to be more impactful and be able to affect change. So therefore, I really wanted to start to lead how we change things at the bank. And at that point I was still at Bankers Trust, and I was working in the fixed income business. And so that's what we essentially started to work with. But when I think about my career and, some of the people that I've met along the way, they have been impactful to what I've learned, and I've been impactful to what they've learned. And I think as a person of color, as a Black woman, and really always being the only Black woman in the room, and I think that really hasn't changed. It's really now giving voice to that, to people. Why am I the only Black woman in the room? Look around you. It's 2020. Why am I the only one who looks like this? And and giving people license to ask questions about why that is. And I think people are getting to the point where people just realizing it's because people don't care. that whether you're the only one in the room. And so my part of my role and part of my being in a room with people to actually have that conversation is to get them to say, actually, do you care enough that I'm the only, I'm that underrepresented, that I'm the only one in the room, right? And so I think, when you talk about the only, a woman director at Deutsche Bank, there aren't, in technology, there aren't many Black directors at Deutsche Bank in technology. And part of, my part of the work that I'm doing around Black inclusion at the firm and around the work that we're doing on the apprenticeship scheme is to remediate that and to fix that. And the bank is very, they're very, what's the word I want to use? They are very focused on doing that, right? It's definitely part of the ethos that they have around, and actually they're measuring that and they're working with that. Part of our relationship with you is to actually be able to grow, the people that we, the grow and move as many women, not just women, but Black women also across into the firm. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit at this point. I've gotten to the place where I can be in fact impactful and I can have a voice, and so we can actually try to affect change.
I love that. And it's funny because quite often we don't take the time to look back at what we've achieved. And, the journey to success is not a straight line. It's really ups and down, and we have to learn to navigate. But I think we both know that how important networking is. And trust me, if it wasn't for networking, I wouldn't be where I am right now. People that you can be great at what you do, but if nobody knows you, then nothing's going to happen. So I want to discuss with you networking in terms of, you mentioned people that have helped you and, across different companies and where you are. How have you used networking to be able to get to, to the position that you have right now? What have been some of the, I would say tactics, but what have been some of the actions that you've taken intentionally to progress so well in your career?
I think what's really interesting, back then it wasn't called networking. It was being annoying, right? So, I was always so interested in what people were doing, right? Because I was interested in technology, right? So I was like, well, I started in the data center, and each one of these platforms that we used to ran on different technology, right? Everybody had different tech that they were running on, right? And so so I was always interested in that. So I'd always ask people, what do you do? And I literally would make time, I would leave, the area that I was working in, and I might just go over to that person and go and sit next to them and say, what are you doing? Can you just, and be interested, right? So that's why one of the things I say to people is be interested, be curious, right?
True.
Be curious about what's going on around you. And based on that, I actually got to know quite a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about working in a data center is you call people up in the middle of the night, so you almost become part of their family, right? Because Sandra's on the phone, right? So, you really did get to know a lot of people across completely different areas, completely different business units, what they did, but also the technology that they used. And you became a trusted partner. You were an extension of what they had delivered. And so therefore, the fact that I would go and spend time, and some of those people I still speak to today, that, I've never really worked with them. I've just been that person who go, what are you doing? And now, and the thing that's been interesting about that, it has been that those people have always approached me and said, are you interested in doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That has been, when I think back on my career and what I have done, it is very rare that I've had to go for a formal interview, right? Because essentially my reputation almost precedes me in that this is something that I've worked on before. Somebody's asking me essentially to do it again somewhere else, right? So always seen as a safe pair of hands, and not afraid to call it out when it's just not going to work, right? So and this is how And that's how I've always run the programs I've run. That's how I've always run my teams, to be honest and open with people about where they are, if something isn't working and what we need to do to make that work. And it may be that, the point of this now is that actually it's not going to work, and we need to find some other solutions, right? And I think that's important, because there's nothing worse than somebody spending time on something which is really their life, right? They're spending, somebody's in the office spending time with you. That means they're not spending time with their family, right? So they're invested. The fact that they're there, they are invested. So I need to give that same amount of investment to that person, just like people have given that investment to me. So when we talk about networking and being available, if somebody invites you somewhere, take the time to go. Even if you're only going to go for 15 minutes, take the time to go. And you never know who you're going to meet. You can't meet people at home. So you need to get out there, and really invest the time in doing that, because ultimately it's for your own benefit.
Absolutely. And I think that's, and I think sometimes, coming to this country and by myself, I got very comfortable here, uncomfortable, but quite often what I've seen quite often in the Black community and other communities, I mean, every community, whatever you go, Asian, whatsoever, we feel better around each other. So it's quite hard when you go to an environment where, again, as you say, you are outnumbered, and then you have, it's like, what do I say to a white man who's in his 50s? How do I start a conversation? And it's one thing that, so I wanted to ask you a question around that, like what people maybe who are younger and listen to this say, I don't know, how can I, start a conversation with somebody who's maybe 60 years old and, is a white man or whatsoever. And I love the fact that you talk about reputation, and reputation make it safe. So the first thing I want to ask you is around, for somebody who's scared, and I'm like you, I'm super curious, I'm very busy. And I say, I'm going to annoy you, that. So yes, I'm comfortable with being annoying. So I love that. So the first question I wanted to ask is very much for the young people listening to this right now, say, oh my gosh, I have no idea how can I connect with someone who is, maybe in the 50s and I'm just 20 something, or maybe even older whatsoever. And then I want to address as well the reputation bit, which is so important, which is, also building your own personal brand and being more than just words.
So I think when you're going into a room where the reality is you've been invited somewhere, right? So there are two ways of doing it. You can either go with somebody that you know, right? And so therefore, there's safety in numbers, right? Or at least make sure there's somebody there that you do know. So even if you're turning up separately, there's somebody else that you do know. I've always been somebody that, I tend to listen more than talk, right? So I'm the curiosity part, which is, someone, you can join a circle of people who are speaking and listen to what they're talking about. And then you can actually make conversation in that circle, right? Based on what they're talking about, right? So, and kind of give your opinion on what that is. And essentially you're invited here, you're welcome here. If they didn't want you to be there, you wouldn't be there. So that's the first thing, right? That's what you have to remember. You're not an outsider, but you're absolutely right. It's really hard to go into a room on your own with people who don't look like you and know how to communicate with those people without thinking they're going to think that I'm silly, I don't know what I'm talking about, right? So, start with, there is no such thing as a stupid question, right? And so, the reality is you're there to network and learn. If you don't ask any questions, you're not going to learn anything, right? So get comfortable with being able to ask questions. And even if you want to prep yourself beforehand and say, well, these are the questions I want to get answered, right, while I'm here, and do that, right? And even if it's just you've got a canned list of questions that you want to ask, that's fine too, right? You're always going to get a different answer, and you'll always be able to take that and say, well, I asked this particular person this and they gave me a different answer. Oh, well, why are these two things slightly different? And does that does that matter to me? Is that impactful to me? Does that move me forward? Does that take me on the journey that I want to be on? So sometimes it can be just, you're going out with friends and you meet someone who becomes part of that circle, right? And so you end up with this huge body of people who really don't know each other, but they all know each other through you. It's like that kind of thing that goes on. And I think it's important to do that, is to continue to not just grow your own circle and your network, but to also introduce people to other people in order for them to grow their network. So that's why the work that you're doing is phenomenal, because really what that's really doing is to 6 degrees of separation, right? I'm introducing somebody from my network to somebody in another network, right? That's awesome, right? Because ultimately these people would never have met. They may have met, but it might have been some way down the road, right? But there's always value in that, in being able to ask someone. And sometimes you will leave those conversations with questions you didn't want to ask, but you might send someone an email and say, oh, I didn't ask you this question, do you mind answering this question? Or can we go for coffee or something like that? So because sometimes people don't like asking questions in an open forum. So I always try to give people an opportunity. If you don't want to ask the question now, let's ask the question later. I think it's very, some people are really shy. I fortunately am not really shy. I have 4 brothers, right? And I tell people that I work with this all the time. I've got 4 brothers. They're 4 different archetypes. There's not a man I've never met that isn't like one of them. So really, there's nothing new under the sun. So so that's kind of how I always judge it. I came from a family of 5 of us, and I'm the only girl in this family.
The brothers, I don't know which.
Like, oh, that's Glenn. Oh, that's Wayne. Oh, that's Gary. Oh, that's Mark. Oh, okay, got it. So yeah, and it has been. You do. I really get it with women, right? And this is not just Black women; it's just women, right? Is that you have to grow a thicker skin, right? There's no, you can't dress it up as anything other than that. That's what needs to happen. And I've been fortunate that I grew up with 4 boys, so that thick skin, 18 years of creating a thicker skin, right? Where people will say things to me and I don't pay any attention to it, or you take it in but you don't internalize it and make it about make what they're saying to you about you. I'm always very good at saying, well, they've said this, but this is really, really about them. It's got nothing to do with me, right? And so not letting people change the course of your journey. And that's what I always say to people. This has got nothing to do with you. It is your journey, and you choose your journey.
Yeah. Can I tell you something, Sandra? I think that's so important that you say that, because and I haven't said that to many people, but literally that organization, I remember when I told certain people about it, they say, oh, we don't need this. And if I had listened to their own limitation, we would have not been where we are right now. And sometimes you have to truly believe in yourself, even if when people set their own limitation and try to make them yours, it's important to remember what you're trying to achieve. And if you believe in it, then, the success will follow. But yes, so yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately it. It's your journey. I mean, I hear so many people when they speak sometimes, and they're speaking about why they haven't achieved what they wanted to achieve, and they speak about people who have long forgotten them, and that to me is heartbreaking to listen to that, because that means that you gave up your dream, you gave up your journey.
100%. I'm going to take on so many good things that you say. When you think about networking, never go, if you're new to this, if you're not one of us, we just go into a room and just speak to anybody, speak someone that find your person who can come with you. And remember that networking is also not only about taking, but it's also about giving work. How can you help somebody else? and really pay attention. I was exactly what you did. I was always listening. I remember the first time I sat at a table and there was so many forks and so many knives. I didn't know which one to pick. So I just, oh, if you take a bread on the left hand side, if you take a bread on the right hand
You
side.
watch somebody else.
I know you wait for this, so you just wait and see what they do.
But the thing that's really interesting is when you're young, you think everybody's watching you, and they're not.
They're not. Nobody gets. Everybody's focused on themselves, you know. So that's
Correct.
so interesting. And you realize, you know, the reason why you were here today is similar to why I'm here today. We were curious. We would never be afraid to be ourselves and not apologetic about our choices and who we are. And also recognizing that not everybody's going to like you. You're not going to be friends with everybody
No,
that you meet. Just move on to the next person. That's what.
but that's not why you're there. This
Yeah.
is not a beauty contest. It's just not why you're there, right? I mean,
No.
you have to know why you're there, right? I mean, and great, you might pick up some things along the way that you weren't expecting. But I always used to say to people when I used to work, you know, and generally when it's generally black people, if I'm in a room of black people, I always used to say to them, why are you here? Like if you
Mm,
come to an office environment, I'd always sit them down and I would say, why are you here? What are you doing here?
mm.
You know, and they'd be shocked. Well, you know, I'm doing this
Exactly.
job. And I'm like, no, but why are you here?
Mm,
Well, why are you here? What do you want to get out of this? Because
mm.
I would say to them, get what you came for. Don't start complaining when you're going out the door. So
Yeah.
remember, think about why you're here, what you want to get out of it, what you want to achieve. Because if you can do that, then you can tell me. So I will help you get that, right? But if you don't know what you want to do, I can't help you. I don't know what you want.
So obvious, but a lot of people work, a lot of people live their life without intention, you know,
Correct.
and it's so much power of setting an intention. We are now doing this interview in Fireside Chat in October 2022. My team and I are already working on 2023, and
Yeah.
it's October, November tomorrow. But
2023, 2024, and 2025.
you know, so
It's like,
and some
God forbid.
companies plan, you know, 5, 10 years, 20 years ahead. But if you don't
Yeah.
know what you want, how are you going to get there?
But even if you know, even if you only know this month, something, right? You
Yeah.
know, this thing about New Year's, you know, they call it New Year's resolutions, where you kind of sit down and say, okay, this year I want to achieve this, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to be able to say, even if you only know for the first month, I want to do this, then do it with intention. And you may decide halfway through, you don't want to do it, which is fine. But
Yeah.
do something. Don't do nothing.
Yes. Can we come back to one thing that you just said, which was about you having built your reputation and making it safe for people to work with you. And I tell you as well, a personal story is that when I've,
Someone's at the door. Can you give me 1 second? Someone's at
yes,
the
of
door.
course.
Sorry.
All right. So okay, 10 seconds. I think we'll talk about reputation. 5. One thing that you mentioned that I really, you know, I'm joking. Sometime at the moment. One thing that you say, Sarah, that I really love was reputation made it safe for people to work with you. And I wanted to add up to that because I remember, you know, when I started my journey as an entrepreneur, I didn't want people to see me as a woman, didn't want to see me as a Black woman. I wanted people to see me as an entrepreneur. So I really focused on being really good at what I did or what I do. And in the back of that, you know, I had obviously dealing with people that underestimated me, and obviously as normal, people always don't assume that you are what you are, or you're good at what you do. But yes, I want to talk about building your reputation to get to where you are and how you do it, but also you say reputation, make it safe. And then I think in the back of that, people forget colors, people forget your gender, right? Or would you?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Because, I always say to people, do your job. First thing you have to do is your job. If you do your job well, people remember you did your job well. And, you know, and another thing that's always true, they always give busy people more work. Right? So if you're good at what you do, you always have a list of things to do that are well in excess of what you can actually do. That people give you extra work to do because you were successful at the last thing you did, right? So case in point,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of how it works. So, you know, I'd always say to them, well, this person over there, they're not busy. Why don't you give it to them? And they'd laugh at me because I never really understood. Okay. It took me years to work it out. So yeah, so I think that's the challenge. You know, I always say to people, do your job. Do the thing that you said you would do. Get that done. And you know, don't take no for an answer. And I think that is, you know, that's the thing across whatever you do in life, to be honest with you. So, you know, don't take no for an answer, or find another way. Go around it, go under it, you know, take it out, change it around. You know, if I turn this 6 on the head, is it a 9? You know, how do I get there, right? How do I get there? There's always going to be a way to get there, right? And you know, I always say that it'd be great if you could do it on the motorway, but you know, generally it's you know, you have to end up getting onto a minor road, and then sometimes you end up in a cul-de-sac, and you know, there are lots, you know, lots of ways to get to the same destination.
100%.
But as you have to get to destination, right? You ultimately have to get to destination. So, and actually keep in mind what it is you were trying to achieve. So whether that's in the role that you're doing, whether that's in your career, whether that's in life, you know, what are you trying to achieve, and did you achieve it? And now you may not have achieved it the way you wanted to achieve it, but it doesn't mean you didn't achieve it, right? And I think it's you know, so you know, not everything's perfect, right? And perfection is in the eye of the beholder, right? Because it might be perfect to me, but not perfect to somebody else, right? So, and vice versa. People generally get hung up on it wasn't done the way I wanted it done, and that makes that therefore gives their achievement less meaning. What I say is, but it's done. Take value in you got there and it is done, right? And so you now can move on to the next thing and take from what you learned here to the next thing.
I want to echo on what you just said, because I think sometimes, you know, the term Black excellence is said so lightly, and I think people sometimes put themselves under so much pressure of that excellence. And I always try to say to, you know, when I define Black female excellence, I say that you are good. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to do far more than the others. You just have to recognize your power, what you bring to the table. That's what makes you excellent. But it doesn't mean that you need to work twice harder to get the same salary as, you know, Jean-Paul or somebody else in the room.
I mean, I think that comes from, you know, our background, right? It comes from, you know, that feeling of that imposter view that we have of ourselves, and the fact that we always put other people first. You know, whether you're Black or woman, it doesn't matter. Women put other people first.
100%.
Right. And so because we're doing that, we're always taking lesser than, right? And so we're ultimately going to feel disappointed, right? That it just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out. So I think that it is challenging to continuously, as a woman, go, this is how I want it done. So that, you know, when you are a leader, you have to say, this is how I want it done, you know, and sometimes, you know, men don't take that well. You know, if you come from a male dominated environment, men don't take it well. And, you know, I've had discussions with people. I said, well, I'm a leader of men. What do you want? Do you want it done or don't you want it done? So it's you know, it's not everyone is going to like you. It's just not going to happen, right? But you have to, if the most important thing for you is that everybody likes you, then oh dear,
Definitely should not be a leader. And I think that's exactly that,
Well, you
I,
can't be.
yeah, you
You
can't
can't
be,
be both.
yeah, 100% not. And I think there's one thing people have known that I've been in management for over now, gosh, more than 15 years. People say to me, I feel like, got you, you are tough. I said, but you know why I'm tough? That at the end of the day, you achieve, I'm trying to get you what the potential that I see. So I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And
Right.
sometimes it might not be what you like to hear, but it will help you in the long run. You will still help you. And I love the fact that, they come back, or stay, have good relationship and say, God, I've learned so much. And that's why I want to do is exactly what you say, you go into these roles, because people are older than you or, men or whatsoever, then, micromanaging people kills me. I hate doing this.
Yes.
I
Yes.
hate
I do not enjoy the micromanagement at all. I'm, I will generally say to somebody, either you're doing it or I'm doing it. Which one? Who's doing it? If you want to do it, here it is. So can't both do it.
No, doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And if you're making a decision that I ultimately am going to have to, I'm happy for you to make a decision, and that's the decision we move forward on, as
Mm,
long as we remember that it was your decision,
mm,
right? Because ultimately, if I'm making the decision, I have to live and die on that decision that I've made, right? I'm the one who's going to have to fix it,
mm,
right? If I make a decision and it doesn't work out, I'm the one who has to fix it, which is why I prefer to be the one making the decision,
yeah.
right? Because it means that and when I make a decision, I have a plan A through Z. Like if A doesn't work, then it's B, then it's N, then it's P, and if you glue E and F together, that gives you A. It's always but it ultimately at the end of the day, it will deliver something that somebody can move forward on
Mm,
as a baseline, right? It will not give you everything. It's just not possible,
no,
right? Because we're always changing
yes. Can
and
we
we're
talk a
always
little bit?
evolving.
Can we also talk a little bit about that piece? What do you think is important to tell your story and get this
So I
around?
suppose I suppose what there are a couple of things, right? And I think that people will say, "Oh, Sandra, director of Deutsche Bank," you know, and it's almost like my title precedes me, kind of
Mhm.
thing. And the reality is, I'm a girl from Southeast London, right? And I went to a school that nobody remember its name. School doesn't exist anymore, and it wasn't a great school. And ultimately, as you go through your life, you make choices about where you want to be.
Mhm.
And I wanted to show people that that all of the things that people say you need in order to be successful, not all of those building blocks are required.
Mhm.
You can take other routes to success. And what is the definition of success? You got to be your definition, not somebody else's definition, right? I have we've got an apprenticeship scheme at the firm, and apprentices will say to me, "Oh, how long will it take to become an MD?" And I'll say, "Why do you want to be an MD? What is it? What does that mean to you? What does that actually mean?"
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Because life is a journey, right? There are things that you're going to learn along the way, and you're going to take different roads as you get there, because life is about living and it's about enjoying your journey. It is not about that title or whatever that thing is at the end of whatever rainbow, the perception of, right? The perception of, which is the reason why to me, it's always about the role. So I'll always say to people, it's really important for you to enjoy what you're doing and the role that you're doing, because if you're doing that, then everything else will come,
Mm, 100%.
right? If you
100%.
don't enjoy the role, everybody can see it.
Yeah.
it's it's so obvious, and it doesn't matter how much you say you love it. People look at you going, "You don't like this, does she?
Yeah.
Look, look what she just did." So,
When
you
it
know,
comes,
it's,
and I want to ask you a question because when it comes to Deutsche Bank is always not Google, it's not Pinterest or TikTok.
yeah.
People think maybe about what is it exciting about Deutsche Bank? What would you tell them?
I think that what Deutsche Bank has, it's a huge organization, right? And it has so many different roles. And it is not, people say, oh, it's a financial institution and I don't understand finance. And I remember, when the apprentices first joined and they said, I want to do finance. And I go, well, so you want to do accounting? And they were like, no, I want to work in the business. I go, that's not finance. So it's, so it's, and that's, even at, the festival on Thursday, I had a young lady who came to me and she said, oh, I'm a data scientist. And I said, well, these are just words, really. There are lots of different roles. Make sure you understand the role that you're doing. And the thing about large institutions like Deutsche Bank is we have lots and lots of different roles. Even in technology, we have lots of different roles. We aren't just writing code. I don't write code. Okay, we aren't just writing code, right? There's a lot of thinking that goes into what we're doing in order for us to achieve something before anybody has written any code at all, right? So, and there are lots of different roles like Scrum, product owner, and the way that we, kind of pull our teams together and how our teams are made up, and how we actually grow together as teams, right? And how we actually influence people outside of our teams. There are so many skills that you are going to learn by working in an environment like Deutsche Bank, right? And I'm not saying that you won't learn them at Google or Amazon, but Deutsche Bank is so much better.
Yeah, we're going to find on the 1st of December, right? The event is on the 1st of December.
1st of December, right? And so, yeah, I mean, we are so looking forward to that. At Deutsche Bank, right? So it's a time for us to kind of like step out into the light with our brand and say these are the things that we can offer, and it's and ultimately we should have examples at the organization who are going to be participating at the event, who could be able to actually highlight in their journey at the organization and what that means to them and how they have managed to fit in. And the bank pulls together lots of what we call ERGs, which are groups. So obviously we have a Black Leadership group, we have a Women in Tech group. We have a lot of people. We talk about our people strategy, and we talk about how we can make sure that we're inclusive. We talk about neurodiversity, and making sure that people are comfortable and actually working with managers to say, if you are a manager of people, how are you managing the people who work for you? Do you have women in your team? Do you have people in your team who need more help? How are you managing that? What skills do you need to be able to do that? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to, if you are bringing people into the organization, you want to be able to keep them. You want to retain them.
100%.
Right? It costs a lot of money to keep changing, having the people leave and then have other people rejoin. So what you want to be able to do is support people in the journey. Some people may be looking to go part-time, or they've got other commitments that they need to manage outside of work. That's part of their journey, right? So when we talk about a journey, are you supporting the journey of women? Right, yeah, who are, and I think what's really interesting is that when we talk about the changes that have happened in the workplace where men can take paternity leave, I've got a guy in my team who's going to be taking paternity leave soon. Bravo to him. And and so it's about sharing. It's about the fact that now men can actually also be part of their home life, and now that, which also means that women can also now say, I think the greatest thing about the pandemic is that you're all now allowed to have children, right? It seems to be that everybody was thinking no one had children, right? And now you can actually say, oh, well, it's my daughter in the background, or before it was like, oh my God, they're talking.
Yes, but the choose between career and family, yeah.
Correct. You had to choose, and so men are now able to have. I mean, I sat in a meeting once where it was amazing. There was a guy, and his daughter had her desk. She was like 5, and she had her little desk, and he had his desk, and she clearly wanted to sit with her dad, and so in order to facilitate that, he had to like have her little desk. And I thought, look at that, that's amazing, right? Because now that gives women permission to do the same. Whereas before, women were looked down upon, that they weren't serious about their careers, if they were putting their family first.
Yes, I will tell you a story. I remember listening to one of it was Hillary Clinton who was talking about when she was a lawyer, and when a lawyer gets his office, yes, they will recommend to a man, make sure that you put a photo of your family and your wife and your daughter on the table. But as a woman, if you put the same photo on a table, it means that you were not focused on your work.
You were not committed.
Yeah, you're not committed to it. I'm like, oh my God, it's like crazy when you think about it. But if it's a man, it means it's reliable, it's someone who has good values.
Looks after his family, and he's got family values, and he's a safe pair of hands, and all of those wonderful things, right? That's the connotation, right? And if a woman does it, well, she's clearly not focused.
Yeah, it's clearly not. Sounds so crazy. Sandra and I, we can talk about this forever. I have one more question I want to ask you. This is my favorite question. I always like to ask this question. Looking at your career, is this something that you wish you knew sooner?
Oh, the thing I wish I'd known sooner is that I didn't have to know absolutely everything about what I was doing. Right? I think that has been, that need to be no X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So if a question was asked, I know the answer, whereas now I'm much more comfortable to say, my learning colleague over there will be able to answer that question. Whereas before I would literally have to know the answer. Like I just couldn't not. And I think that's something, it's helped me in my career, but when I think about it, I've spent years where I didn't have to do that. If I think about it, it's not, and as I look at my peers around me, I'm the only one who feels like that. Right. And it's an interesting thing. I don't know if that's something that women do.
Yeah.
But it's it's definitely something that when I look back now, I'll say to myself, you don't have to know all of it.
You don't have to know.
You just have to know it exists, Sandra. You don't have to know how it works.
Yes, I mean, I remember. I think it was either I can't remember which very famous CEO said that. But when somebody asks me to do something, you figure out later. And as an entrepreneur, I've learned those things. Like, okay, yes, I'll do it, and I figure out later. Work with a company who can partner with to just get the opportunity. So sometimes again, something I think sometimes people are the perfectionist, and people say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I think that's not a good quality at all. Opposite, because you'll be a procrastinator. So people use that in the interviews, like, oh my gosh, this person's not going to do anything. So really, I think it's about that, getting started, keep improving, and and you will make magic. But people who are listening, obviously, I hope that you enjoy. Sandra will be with us on the 1st of December. She's also in the book, The Voices in the Shadow, 1st of December, 2022. So if you're watching this after 1st of December, well, you can just watch it. But you can
watch it.
So Sandra Powell, Deutsche Bank, look for her on LinkedIn. She's a great person to know, great person, great ally. And as I mentioned, Deutsche Bank is doing quite a lot of few things. They have an apprenticeship scheme that, if you are young and trying to start your career in one of the top companies around the world, why not? There's no harm applying and see what's what. But make sure that you like and comment, and I will see you very soon, everybody. Thank you so much, Sandra, for giving us some of your time. And again, see you very soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Villa. Good to see you.